Are you ready to play Diablo 4 with one hand on the mouse and the other hand eating a sandwich? Well, it is possible with this ultimate AFK mass minion build. This Necromancer build can push through high level dungeons with ease, and you can power level very quickly. You do not need any legendary aspects for this build to work, and you can easily handle any bosses. So let's check this out. Okay, so first I'm going to show you clearing this dungeon, and this build can easily do any content 5 to 10 levels higher than you. You will not need any legendary aspects to make this build work, but having legendary aspects will make clearing dungeons faster. I can easily destroy bosses, and with this build you will have no trouble producing corpse for your skills. If you're fighting any enemies around your level, you can easily go AFK, or just walk around and your minions and auto cast skills will easily destroy everything around you. Now, one key item you'll need for this build is getting the Malignant Heart Cage Heart of Sacrilegious. This Malignant Heart will automatically activate corpse skills every second when walking near them. You can easily get this Malignant Heart right in the beginning of the game if you already completed the campaign. Now, you may have to do a couple dungeon runs through the Malignant Tunnels to get this Malignant Heart, but it does drop very commonly and often. Okay, so first let's go over our skills. Now, the basic skill I'm going to use is Decompose, and this skill is good for forming corpse, and whoever you decompose, your minions will do increased damage to them. Now, this skill is really good against bosses, because when fighting bosses, it is hard to form corpse, and with this skill, you will have tons of corpse when fighting bosses. The next skill I'm using is Corpse Explosion. Now, with Corpse Explosion, you do want to put a skill point into Blighted Corpse Explosion, so the Corpse Explosion becomes a darkness skill, and it will do shadow damage over time. And the Blighted Corpse Explosion will work with all these passives down here, which works with darkness skills. Now, our defensive skill is Blood Mist. This will allow us to break crowd control and make us immune. Blood Mist is also really good because it will also form corpse every 1 second. So basically, this is the best defensive skill for the Necromancer. Now, of course, this is a mass minion build, so I have Golem and Ray Skeleton. And with our minions, we can basically AFK farm. And the last skill I have is Corpse Tendrils. Now, this skill is really good because it will pull enemies and stun them. And this skill will also apply vulnerable to the enemies. And because of the Malignant Heart, where walking near corpse automatically activates and equips corpse skills every second, it will basically activate Corpse Tendril, Ray Skeleton, and Corpse Explosion all automatically. Now, I do want to mention that you can adjust your skill bar to your playstyle, but the reason I have Decompose on my right click is because when I use Force Move and when I try to attack with Decompose with Shift click, the skill kind of bugs, so I put Decompose on my right click. But you can switch this around depending on what's comfortable for you. And I also want to note that when you're fighting higher level enemies, you do want to manually use your Corpse Explosion as well, so you can get a lot more Corpse Explosion at once. And when you manually do your Corpse Explosion won't get any reduced damage because of the Malignant Heart. So next, let's check out the skill tree. So for the basic skill, I went with Decompose, and I put a point into Enhanced Decompose and a point into Acolytes Decompose. And of course, this basic skill is one of the best basic skills to form corpse. And when we decompose enemies, our minions will do increased damage to them. Next, for the core skills. Now, I didn't take any active core skills, but I did put 3 points into Hewitt Flesh, which states Lucky Hit. Your damage has up to 12% chance to create corpse at the target's location. This chance is doubled against bosses. And of course, with this build, forming corpse is really important. Next, for the corpse and macabre skills, I put 1 point into Blood Mist, a point into Enhanced Blood Mist, and a point into Ghastly Blood Mist. And Blood Mist is our best defensive skill. It will break out of all CCs and it will make us immune. And Blood Mist will also generate corpse. Next, I put 1 point into Corpse Explosion, a point into Enhanced Corpse Explosion, and a point into Blighted Corpse Explosion. Now, this will be our active damage skill. And this is the one skill where we want to manually active, so we don't lose damage from the Malignant Heart. Now, the reason I've only put 1 point into Corpse Explosion is because when you convert Corpse Explosion to the Blighted Corpse Explosion, putting more points into Corpse Explosion won't actually increase the shadow damage. So only 1 point will be needed in Corpse Explosion. And I put 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery for increased damage and life to my Skeletal Warriors. Next, for the curse skills, I put 3 points into Death Embrace, so I do more damage and take less damage from close enemies. And I put 3 points into Skeletal Mage Mastery for increased damage and life to my Skeletal Mages. Now, for the next sets of Corpse and Macabre skills, I put 5 points into Corpse Tendrils, a point into Enhanced Corpse Tendrils, and a point into Plague Corpse Tendrils. Now, this skill is important for pulling and grouping enemies. It will stun them and also apply vulnerable to them. And the reason I put 5 points is to reduce his cooldown as much as possible. Next, I put 3 points into Necrotic Carapace, and this skill is just for survivability. Next, I put 3 points into Reaper's Pursuit, 3 points into Crippling Darkness, 3 points into Gloom, and 3 points into Terror. Reaper's Pursuit will increase our movement speed. Crippling Darkness requires Lucky Hit, and it makes our darkness skills have a chance to stun enemies. seconds. And the skill Gloom and Terror will increase your and your minions' darkness skill damage. Next, for the ultimate skill section, I put 3 points into Golem Mastery for increased damage and life to our Golem, 3 points into Aspiring Leader, 3 points into Hellbent Commander, 2 points into Bonded in Essence, and 3 points into Death's Defense. Now, Inspiring Leader and Hellbent Commander is for our minions for increased damage. Death Defense is very important so our minions don't die instantly. And Bonded in Essence is a situational skill. You're probably gonna barely use this skill, but it'll help with your skeleton survivability. And last but not least, for the key passive, I chose Callan's Edict, and this basically increases our minions' attack speed. Okay, so next let's go over the Book of the Dead. So for Skeletal Warriors, I went with Reapers, and the skill I chose is Reapers have a 15% chance to carve the flesh off enemies, forming a corpse. And with this build, you want to form as much corpse as possible. For the Skeletal Mages, I went with Shadow, and having the Skeletal Mages do shadow damage pairs with some of our other skills. And the skill I chose is Shadow Mage attacks have a 10% chance to stun for 2 seconds. This cannot happen on the same enemy more than once every 5 seconds. And this skill is really good for CC and staggering the bosses really quickly. And last but not least, for Golem, I went Bone. And the skill I chose is each time your Bone Golem takes up to 20% of its maximum life as damage, it sheds a corpse. And of course, forming corpse is really good for this build. Now, you may be thinking why I didn't choose Iron Golem, which stuns enemies and they have a skill that makes enemies vulnerable. The reason I didn't choose this skill is because the stun is only for 3 seconds. If you have Bone Golem, you have a taunt which is 6 seconds long. And that 3 extra seconds in taunt is so much bigger and better to use compared to a 3-second stun. Taunting the enemies for 6 seconds is so long that by the time the taunt is done, all the enemies should be already dead, and your Bone Golem will take all the damage off you and your minions. So you and your minions can clear the enemies a lot faster. And I did test Bone Golem and Iron Golem on the higher difficulties, and Bone Golem was so much better just because of the 6-second taunt. And when it comes to applying vulnerable to enemies, the skill Corpse Tendril will apply vulnerable to groups of enemies. Okay, so now let's check out the gear. Now, I do want to mention that since I'm still leveling and upgrading my gear, I won't have the best stats for each gear and the legendary aspect I'm looking for. But I'll have a D4 build planner in the description below with the best stats and the legendary aspect you're looking for. So when it comes to leveling and upgrading your gear, what you're looking for is the plus green number. Ideally, you want to focus on your stats once you reach ancestral level gear. So starting with the helm, you're looking for cooldown reduction. And the legendary aspect is that I gain increased armor, but this legendary aspect you can switch around. Next, for the chest piece, you're looking for damage reduction in armor. And for the legendary aspect, I have while you have 7 or more minions, your minions gain 18% increased damage reduction. For the gloves, you're looking for lucky hit chance. And the legendary aspect I have is your maximum number of skeletal mages is increased by 2. For the pants, you're looking for damage reduction. And the legendary aspect I have is you gain a barrier when damaging an elite enemy. And this legendary aspect you can change. Now, for the boots, you're looking for movement speed. Now, movement speed will be one of the most important stats you're looking for on a Necromancer. The Necromancer doesn't have any fast movement abilities. And for the legendary aspect, I have Blood Mist triggers corpse explosion on surrounding corpse. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.3 seconds. This legendary aspect is really good because it will trigger our corpse explosion quicker. Now, when it comes to the weapon, you're looking for a 2-handed weapon because it will greatly increase our minions' damage. And ideally, you're looking for a 2-handed sword because the base stat will give you critical strike damage. And the stats you're looking for is to increase your damage. And the legendary aspect I have is your skeletons gain increased damage while alive, up to 70% after 10 seconds. And this is a huge damage boost to our skeletons. Now for the amulet, you're looking for movement speed and any stats that will buff your minions. And the legendary aspect I have is each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they gain 20% attack speed for 3 seconds, up to 59%. And for the malignant heart, I have when at least 2 enemies are near you, gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies with Decrepify for 19 seconds. Now for the rings, you're looking for lucky hit chance. And for this ring, the legendary aspect I have is Blood Mist leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds and deals 403 shadow damage per second to enemies who stand in it. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while Blood Mist is active. And for the malignant heart, I have Lucky Hit, up to 20% chance of inflicting fear for 2 seconds. Fear enemies are chilled for 20 seconds every second. And for the next ring, the legendary aspect I have is Decompose can chain up to 2 additional targets. When Decompose spawns a corpse, it has a 36 chance to spawn a corpse under all afflicted targets. And the malignant heart I have is walking near your corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second, dealing 30% reduced damage. Now this Malignant Heart will be the most important aspects that you need in this build. This Malignant Heart will allow you to go AFK because your corpse skill will activate automatically. Now the only corpse skill that you do want to activate manually is when you're fighting tougher elites is Corpse Explosion, because when you manually activate Corpse Explosion, you will actually do a lot more Corpse Explosion at once, and your Corpse Explosion won't take reduced damage because of the Malignant Heart. Alright, so that's pretty much the gear I have as of right now when leveling my Necromancer. But like I mentioned before, check out the D4 build planner in the description below to get the exact stats and the legendary aspect you're looking for. Okay, so next the Paragon Board. Now I do want to mention that since I'm only level 56, I don't have that many Paragon points. So this Paragon Board will be updated once I reach level 100. But starting off, I did start with the Warrior Lift Socket to increase my damage of my Skeletal Warriors. And the next Paragon Board I plan to take is Cult Leader to increase my minions damage. But once I reach level 100, I'll have this Paragon Board fully updated and optimized, so stay tuned. Alright, so thanks for checking out the ultimate AFK mass minion build for the Necromancer. I will have an updated and fully optimized AFK build once I reach level 100, so stay tuned. Hope this helps and more Diablo 4 videos to come. And of course,